In order to play the B section with the left hand, it will be useful for us to be able to count while we play so that we'll be able to understand when to strike our left hand keys. The left hand low note, F, will always be landing on beat 1. So if we're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, if we say 1, we need to play that left hand low note. Like phrase 1A and 1B, Satie does not change the bass note and does not change the harmony of this portion of the music. So it'll always be the low F key that we need for beat 1. Whenever trying something difficult, like playing an unfamiliar low note in addition to the melody you've already learned, and when doing something challenging such as counting while playing, of course you should go as slow as you need to in order to get the hang of it, and stop and think if you just really have to. We're only at the beginning of our learning, so we don't need to insist on performance perfection or undue stress or any of that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and... Oops, I made a mistake. My half notes were way too short. I'll start over from that place and try again. Whenever you make a mistake, if you've already gotten past a part that was pretty easy for you, you don't have to start all the way back at the beginning again. Stick to where you were, stick to where the problem was, and stick with that. If you're able to read music, it'll be easier for you to keep track of where you are, but if you're not able to read music, it'll require a lot of concentration and it'll be a little bit more difficult. That's one reason why I'm creating these resources, so that you don't need as much help reading the music and you're able to practice effectively without it. I'll pick up where I was in the third measure of this phrase. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That part again, without counting, would be like this. The whole phrase without counting will be like this. It's still okay to play without dynamics at just whatever volume you're comfortable with. And it's also wonderful as you become comfortable with the keys to add challenges like playing the dynamics differently based on your spontaneous feeling, or just experimenting with seeing if you could play a particular dynamic level. I could tell myself, if I felt like my fingers were feeling a little weak or not under control, I could hypothetically just play this phrase loudly just to practice putting a little more power through my fingers. Or, if I felt like this piece definitely had a mysterious and beautiful sound that I wanted to try to incorporate, I could play softly for fun. Just to grow my range as a pianist. Before we go on to playing the left-hand chords, I want you to be aware of how the second measure is written and how it's expected to be played. The second measure of the right hand has an F, followed by an additional F with a grace note preceding it. The first F is only a quarter note, 1 and. The second F is a quarter note tied to a half note, so it's going to get beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4, because a quarter note gets 1 beat and a half note gets 2 beats, and them tied together means the total amount will be 3 beats given to that key. So we'll be playing beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4 while holding that F. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Because this is an unfamiliar, unusual rhythm based on the context of how the rest of the music has sounded, you may feel yourself having an urge to rush here or to not wait long enough. So I want you to be aware that this F note is indeed longer than what we've been doing elsewhere in the piece, and you need to pay attention and give it beats 2, 3, and 4. Whenever we're adding the left-hand chords, it will be very hard to play them with the bass notes as well, while also playing the new right-hand melody. Here's what it'll be in very slow motion. The left-hand chords, like before in phrase 1A and elsewhere, come on beat 2 and beat 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Whenever you're practicing slowly, don't be afraid to play extremely slowly. I find that my students are not able to play as slowly as me. And the way that I'm able to play slowly is by pretending that my eighth notes are actually quarter notes. And I remember what it was like to be a child, where quarter notes were kind of a very moderate speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I remember that tempo, and I just hold my eighth notes back to that slow tempo. I pretend that the eighth notes written on the paper are quarter notes, and I pretend that all the other notes are twice as long as well, and that helps me stop on every eighth note and get my bearings and make fewer mistakes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start to add the bass note. But just don't try to do the whole phrase if your mind feels overwhelmed, if you feel frustrated, or if your brain feels kind of full. Just do one measure. Every little step is a useful one. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Doing it without pedal, of course, is useful if you're not familiar with how to use the pedal successfully. On the music notation, notes will be written as all sorts of note values. And whenever we're playing chords, they'll be written with those note values as well, such as the chords here that are written as half notes and quarter notes. Because your left hand has to play the bass, as well as the accompanying chords in the middle of the piano, it'll be challenging to move from the chords in the middle back down to the bass. If you are being very literal and were not aware of the conventions of classical piano playing, you might think that you had to play like this. You might think that you had to hold the quarter note for its absolute full value. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You might think you had to hold it for its absolute full value, but that's not really the case. If you see great pianists play, you'll see that their hands look like they're flowing above the keys. And it's because they're using the pedal correctly, and they're letting go of the chords when they need to in order to get to the next note that they need to play. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when you're playing the chord that is on 4 and, let go of it as early as you need to in order to reach the low note. Classical piano music is often also written very polyphonically. That's why whenever you look at the left hand here, the left hand has a low bass note that lasts for 4 beats. But that doesn't mean that you have to hold this for 4 beats before going up to the chords. It's written polyphonically, and the two parts are independent. The bass is written its way, the chords that are in the middle are written their way, and you have to make it all sound the way it's written by using the pedal. And the composer never intended for you to be holding those low notes for 4 beats, since you only have 2 hands, not 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. As I continue this aside into discussing left hand conventions for classical piano, I want to mention the pedaling that I talked about several videos ago. I said that whenever you lifted your foot, you should be sure to lift your foot after you push the key down all the way. Watching the video again, it was apparent that I wasn't really doing that. Once I started playing medium speed and faster, I was lifting my foot at the same time my finger was going down. This is a coordination that might feel strange at first because the two parts of your body are going in opposite directions. So it is true, after you get more comfortable with pedaling and you start to go medium speed and faster, you are allowed to lift your right foot off of the damper pedal at the same time you push the key down. Just be sure that after you get comfortable enough, you don't lift your foot all the way off the pedal, because then that will create the thunk that we want to eventually avoid. Feel the pedal pushing your foot up with the tension in the spring, and keep the ball of your foot or your big toe on the pedal the whole time so that the pedal doesn't go up so quickly that it thunks against the wood of the pedal mechanism. Here will be this whole phrase with the chords again, and then I'll play this whole phrase with the chords and the bass notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Counting can be hard for anyone, but it's nice to take on the challenge and to be remembering my basics by making these videos for you. Now the phrase with the bass and the chords and pedal.